Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Eyes 9.11. Third Reich events, German gameplay augmentation, the D-Worms mods, and units of the Third Reich. Okay, some of that will become important or relevant here in a moment or two. A few days ago, I spent hours trying to make this episode. Various things caused problems, including just doing very well and then clicking the wrong choice on an event that was going to have significant impact on things that I got. Nope, gotta start over. Can't undo that, gotta go back to the save. So this has been some time in coming, and just thinking this looks so much better, but I know a lot of you have trouble seeing what's going on, so over to this. Not that this is terrible. This is not terrible. This is just not my favorite. Okay, two major topics starting out here. I've done a bunch of modding to what's going on here since the last episode. First off, I've gone in and I may release this. If I haven't by the time of release and you guys want me to, poke me below. I've changed the conditions for the Atlantic Wall to show up. They needed 20,000 money. Don't know whether that means Reichsmarks or, or dollars or gold pieces or florins or quatlus or whatever the hell that is, but needed 20,000 just in the bank for them to fire at minimum. Not that each event was going to cost that much. It could cost that much or more, but it didn't. Now some of the justification for that I was given many years ago when it was first put out was we need to do something with Germany and just collecting all the money, but I have not been seeing Germany having some huge, which I used to see much more of, just a huge reserve of money that just sort of generates off of your ICs or something like that. I don't know the exact formula for some of that generation, but it used to be a thing that you'd have huge stocks. So I don't see that anymore, and I think of money as the international exchange within the game, because you can both theoretically in the game and in real life print up, because this is fiat currency, meaning just like printed currency, not that it has gold or silver or any specific item behind it. It's just fiat currency. You can have you can print up as much as you want as a nation and spend it however you want. The only downside really of that is inflation. If you do too much of it, you get inflation. Germany, of course, went through hyperinflation. Part of that was money to pay off war reparations and debts incurred to pay off war reparations and other sorts of things. But won't go down that. So Germany did, as we've seen in some of revolverheld's mods, combination of local script, counterfeiting local currencies in occupied areas, to the point like they got a hold of, Belgium's official money printing plates and printed up a bunch of money, and so it was real, but it was done by the Germans and not by the Belgian government and put into the Belgian economy. And of course, the Germans raided banks and just told the banks, hey, turn over money to us. And then they would use that money to, without taking the money off of the books, meaning everyone still theoretically had their money in the bank, but they just sort of robbed the bank and then used the money to pay people. So the money situation is a thing, but not a real big thing, because most of the Atlantic Wall was, did I say West Wall earlier? I meant Atlantic Wall. Was made on foreign territory, but it was made on occupied territory. So I've changed the conditions for it. I don't think it's cheating. Obviously, it's changing things, and in a way, it made it more expensive because although you can make supplies, sell supplies like to the Soviet Union or to somebody else, it gets harder and harder as you're at war with more and more people. But and build up the money. I've just made a lot of it both a check for a minimum, a significant amount of supplies, and big costs and supplies, to the point that we have 20,000 plus a little bit supplies. Some of the West Wall sections, if you go for the highest level, will be over 20,000 in supplies. Still the original amount of metal, steel, basically, but excuse me, iron or steel, you know, reinforced concrete, steel, you know, anti-tank, you know, those anti-tank traps, the 3 iron bars that sort of make a cross thingy that stands up, whatever you want to call that. You know, so there's a lot of metal involved, as well as, but supplies are also, you know, ammunition, landmines, whatever it might be, barbed wire, that also goes into metal, but it's productions. So now you have to have both a significant amount of supplies in your, and there's also a lot of anti-aircraft guns as part of the defenses increase, and that is of course metal for the anti-aircraft guns, and I'm now, instead of having money, changing it over to supplies, which is production time. So you have to have a significant amount of supplies in reserve for the event to fire, and it's still like 10% of whatever the money was originally. Still have to have the metal. Now you can do minimum levels, or you can do maximum levels. That'll vary your cost on each of the sections. And as part of this, I went and looked at the code, and if I'm understanding the code right, it was originally done by Marnman, good guy, and very cleverly done, must say. And I couldn't come up with it myself. I could sort of take his code now and modify it to do other scripted invasions. You know, I wouldn't steal it and, you know, just steal his work, but I would take his format and reuse it somewhere else. But, you know, monkey see, monkey do is sort of how I code. I have to find an example of it and then change it to fit what I want to do. That's my skill level. Sorry, guys, to burst any bubbles that I'm some sort of great coder. No, I'm not. But it looks like they've gone in and removed the change controller of province, because what was happening is they would say invasion at Dunkirk, put in the units, put in the supplies, and change this over to being controlled by the Allies, Britain, America, whoever. And then the Allies would control that. And so now, if you have fortifications here, they're now actively working against you. So why would you build stronger and stronger fortifications? Why would you build more anti-aircraft guns? Because when you're going to use your air power to fight them, those anti-aircraft guns are just going to be turned against you. So there was a negative incentive to build the wall. Well, it appears, if I'm reading everything right, they no longer do that. We will test that out and play through. It'll be like the invasion that Revolverheld has been doing. Like down here is that he dumps the forces on the province, but the Germans are still the defenders and his forces are the attackers. So that is a real and good positive change for the invasions. So you should build, and we will experiment to see, the Atlantic Wall when it comes, the events. So that's one thing. This other part, if you want to skip past it, is mostly for Revolverheld. I hope he will be watching this. Okay, I've basically gone in and gutted the German leader death events file for this game. After we saw recently having Reinhard Heydrich assassinated in Bohemia and Moravia. Some of the pauses I'm having is what do I say? Czechoslovakia? Do I say Bohemia, or whatever? So, and I would ask revolverheld to cut that event entirely from GGA, because I have a more detailed, more comprehensive event chain dealing excuse me, dealing with that very thing, to the point that you have the choice at some point to send Heydrich to be the deputy Reich protector. Basically, they didn't want to fire Konstantin van Roth, who was the Reich protector, but basically they were going to retire him from active command in Bohemia and Moravia, and but not fire him because he's sort of a popular figurehead, but turn over the running of the occupation government to Reinhard Heydrich and just give him the deputy's title, otherwise the same title. You have the choice whether to send him there or not in TRE, and if you do, then later it does trigger the British assassination attempt, which they used Czechs, and it needed the friendly environment of occupied Czechoslovakia. Maybe sounding oxymoronical, but you know what I mean, that there were Czechs that are willing to cooperate with the assassins. The assassins didn't tell them that they were coming to assassinate Heydrich and it was going to cause lots of reprisals or anything. They were just there on a mission, kind of, that kind of thing. And those people could not have operated in Berlin to do it. So you have that, and then if you've sent him there, then the British can mount the operation, and it may or may not be successful, and then most likely it is. And then you have that, and then you have after his death, then you have a funeral event. So I have a much more complicated and detailed setup for it. So I would just appreciate compatibility in removing yours, and because I'm no longer actively going to significantly expand, there is going to be a new version of TRE coming out sometime, with a bit more stuff and plus fixes within it, but I'm not doing any major new construction of things. And if there's something that you really want to tackle that TRE just sort of kind of has an event or two on, and you want to go in depth, let me know, and I'll be willing to cut something if you're going to be doing that. But the rest of the leader death events, you need some more checks for. Yeah, I know some of them are based off of, and they're not actually deaths, they're just removals, but functionally they're removing the person from the game, the general, the minister, the whoever it might be, but from the game. So some of them are have checks based on your sort of Hitler's assignments. I forget what you specifically call it. I know some of them have that. But like the July 20th plot. The July 20th plot was not done because the German officer corps or elements of it finally woke up and found Hitler's evil. He's doing death camps and mass murder and all this other stuff, so he has to be stopped. No, it was he's leading Germany down the path of destruction for Germany. He has to be stopped from doing that. So I would have, and I don't know how, it's a complicated thing. Take this conditions, for example, that if we're sort of here, Italy is still in the game. Germany is significantly, maybe not absolutely in control, but generally in control of the Mediterranean, or the Axis are, with Italy's help. There may still be a war raging in the Soviet Union, but say two of the three big sort of key cities that we use. Stalingrad really isn't a key city other than its sort of location as a pinning access point. Probably, I don't know, Astrakhan was probably a bigger city population-wise and industrially, and I don't know about some of these others, but but it sort of turns in the game and history's imagination of the Battle of Stalingrad. So Stalingrad, Leningrad, and Moscow, like say 2 of the 3 cities are in German hands, but the war could still be raging here. And like I say, Italy is still well in the war. You know, it hasn't left the war. And maybe there's been a D-Day invasion, but it's contained. It's a pocketed. You know, they haven't either like taken Paris and or Brussels or something. You know, it could be, you know, there could be a serious pocket here. You know, and that you know, the July 20th plotters would not be. And sure, there might be lots of bombing campaigns by the Allies and whatever, but I don't see the July 20th plotters going after Hitler on those conditions. And you don't even really, if I remember, I sort of have. I can't easily click over to it without messing up this recording. Many conditions on it, so that if the Soviet, you know, maybe I don't know, maybe you have war with Soviet Union or something like that, but you know, you could have well east, and you know, so it just you need better checks if you're going to do that, and as well as the Rommel commit suicide after that event, and General Korten need to have better checks for conditions, because or just make it entirely optional. I don't know more details than that, but those events will just sort of fire, and so that really needs some better checks. Also, I would say that a Gross Admiral Raider requests dismissal. From looking at the stuff, just needs the size of the British and the American Navy needs to be big enough. Well, what if you are wanting to pursue a surface fleet? You know, if you built like we have the Graf Spee and completed it, if you're gonna, you know, building some of these other ships, and not maybe specifically these, but just ships, and you know, so I would have, and you know, maybe why would anyone volunteer to keep him? Well, you can have a minor negative effect or something to keep him versus relieving him, you know. But you know, something like keeping Raider reduces submarine efficiency production, you know, or something else, I don't know. But I would do that. And the other not a problem, but just Deedle dies in plane crash. Now, I definitely have plane deaths. I quite honestly don't remember all of the details of the stuff that I coded, but the Wever crash happened. There's like, I think, a 20% chance that he survives. His plane was they had forgot to remove some sort of bracket that holds the flaps or ailerons or something. Sorry, I'm don't know, sort of in place, sort of like when you're landing, so but they won't extend out or operate. So once they took off, that plane had to crash. So I sort of have it play it as, oh, it crashed, but he survived, because it sort of crashes on takeoff. So I, you know, depends on the conditions of how you're landing and how you're doing that. It depends on, you know, it's a shall we say a crash landing, but is it a fatal crash landing or not? I don't know. So I give it a chance of living, as well as theoretically the chance that somebody spotted those clips and took them off, as they should have. So I do a percent chance on that, and for another sort of event chain for deaths, Udet. He hated his job. He never wanted to be assigned to the Reich Air Ministry as a desk job. He hated it. He commits suicide while on the phone, or just after being on the phone with his mistress. I don't know why he committed suicide. I have speculated in the past on one of these videos about some of the stuff. But, you know, so would he have committed... So I take the position, and I think it's a reasonable position, that had he been given a more active, you know, frontline command, commanding a lift float, commanding air units in combat, he wouldn't have committed suicide. We don't know, because we don't know what's in somebody's mind, but I take that position. So if you assign him to Reich Air Ministry, then he'll commit suicide, and then Mulders from wherever he is, I know theoretically he could have been in, because who says that he has to be where he was at the time? He still could have been at Berlin, but if there is the funeral, he flies in for the funeral. he dies in the plane crash. So there's a whole sort of a if-then statements to get to the history. So if you break that chain, you break it. So I don't know about Dietl because he was flying back, something I believe to take command, or he was already in command, but you know, take it back into operations up here. But you did forget. Oh, what's his name? You know, I think it's down here. Like I said, I made. I said I know it's down here, but maybe it's here. Oh yeah, this guy. Speer? Sorry, I don't know proper pronunciation. He was in the plane as well, and another general, I think starting with the last, or with the letter W in his last name, were also on the plane, so you might want to, if you're going to be bloody-minded and kill off the generals forcibly by airplane crash, you might want to add those, but I don't know if you want to add a chance of survival, a chance of whatever to that. I don't have nearly as big, and I wouldn't have been making this if it was just Dietl dies in a plane crash. But the July 20 plotters and the whole Reinhard Heydrich thing prompted me to do this. So I just wanted to cover those. I hope you can get those changed. Okay, well, we're going to go forward a little bit here, sort of get past my recent continual stumbling blocks. Okay, a lot of red up here, sort of is signaling to me that we are being bombed. So let's look at our fighters. Okay, you guys are down here. Well, don't know if this is a place to keep you here or not. Let me move you. Wow, you're beat up. We want to reinforce you with some more units. Going back to the same guy. Okay, down to here. Okay, night fighting. Air intercept, night. A little more, there we go. Make sure we got some coverage into some of the likely areas that they're trying to bomb. Okay, well you're in the east, but just in case somebody comes that far east. We'll let you heal up more. Where are you? You're here, okay. I actually want the Allies to bomb me, but what I want to have happen is that they come in for a bombing raid, my air comes up and basically, you're also an ace, but we'll put you for intercept just in case again. Getting ready for the Soviet invasion, so putting forces, air power there. Is that they come in to bomb and no, you need, well, maybe you'll die. We got more coming. Is to get gutted, you know, because I want to win that so that they then spend ICs repairing the bombers, preferably without them actually making it to the target and bombing, but even if they make it to the target and bomb a little bit, it's not that bad of a thing. Like here, oh, okay. Well, are you here? Okay, so you're coming here. Try to bomb. We've only have one level of anti-aircraft in Leipzig. We should have some fighters. Catch them? I don't know. Okay, give them money. I'm going to decline it. I'm also, even though it's going to be probably for a very short time, try to sell some more supplies to the Soviet Union. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, good. Okay, single engine airframe research has advanced. Very good. And grayed out. I think we'll come over here and do fire from that one. Okay, Repulse is lost. Nelson is lost. That stuff lost from down here when we were fighting? I don't know. Okay, more Canadian formations assemble in England. Okay, I think this is a warning of another possible invasion now. As you may know, that the Dieppe raid, and it was only intended to be a raid because it was sending, basically a division or so. And they were Canadian troops, and so I'm guessing that that is sort of inspiring this. Obviously, this invasion here would have been more of a thing if had Germany been at war with the Soviet Union, and so I would. So we're getting ready for another possible invasion. I'm going to move both or all of these over. Okay, to get this going here. Get you guys back here to remember exactly where each were, but to try to cover likely areas. You guys can stay down here, I guess. And you guys can just come up to here for the moment at least. They may be coming back into there. Okay, yeah, that'll be helpful. Okay, we're going to save that and save that and save that for later. Well, I'll save it for post this. Okay. We're going to take because of a decision thing coming up, we're going to take a hit to our descent levels. So we're going to send in the security police this time. This might be a better solution for us at this moment. I like appease them, but it's just the consumer goods actually are a part of this, but the big thing is the IC 2.5% and the money. So I want to do this, and we'll get some SD type coming here. Yes, there it is. let's get these, our SS goons as they're calling them. And we will build some, put into production more commandos. Big thing is they don't want us to spam them, so they're still expensive. Okay, so we now have a second one of these. Don't know who I'll put them under there because we have this one under Heydrich. Well, actually, we may put the second one under SS Reich Sicherheitshauptamt and SS Reich Sicherheitsamt. Let's see if we can put him under this under Heydrich as well. It's on the name. That's way too far, not far enough. Because there are 2 Heydrichs in the game. Was it funny letter stuff? Or is he already used somewhere else too? Maybe he's already down here. Oh, that's Frank's. Yeah, I'm just not seeing it. Because we have Heydrich. Maybe it's just completely different name. You know, like Reinhard is so that's, I think, my version of him. Oh, here he is. I just somehow blinking out. This is another version of him. So now we have 2 Heydrichs. But in a way, 2 Heydrichs are correct. You may go, what? 2 Heydrichs? Well, we were talking earlier about how he was sent down to be the Deputy Reich Protector for Bohemia and Moravia, but he was also still in charge of the SD. So, having 2 of him, though, since we now have this with, because we only have so many SS, higher SS und Policeführer commands, we can now have more of these guys. Under that. I don't know if I want to do the East. Let's do Nord Frankreich. Switzerland, I don't know. Why not? That gets him 5. So a little better organized. Okay, so we're gonna wait here a little bit to see if this jumps up at all. Okay. Oh, and that's in North Africa. Battle of Algiers. Oh, okay. Forged cooperation with the Chetniks. When Germany invaded Yugoslavia, she met in the Chetniks, an organization trained and adopted for guerrilla warfare. Although there were some clashes between Germans and the Chetniks as early as May 41, the nationalist Serb leader Mihailovic thought of resistance in the terms of setting up an organization which, when the time was ripe, would rise against occupying forces. Basically meaning when they could be victorious, would rise against you. Although, or throughout the war, the Chetniks movement remained mostly inactive against occupying forces, increasingly collaborated with the Axis, eventually losing its international recognition as Yugoslavian resistance. And as early as spring 1942, the Germans favored the collaboration agreement the Ustasi and the Chetniks had established in a large part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Since the Ustashi military was supplied by and immediately subordinate to the German military occupation, collaboration between the two constituted direct German Chetnik collaboration. Yeah, it did. The Chetniks didn't like the Germans. The Chetniks were Serbian nationalists. I think it was a mistake for the British to entirely cut them off, because it gives Yugoslavia to the partisans, to Tito's partisans, and in the post-war world. Just sort of an interest of this photo. He is from Organization Todt. You can see Org Todt by both that and maybe his band might be fairly high-ranking. And that's a German officer. The rest look to be sort of Chetnik types, sort of in Yugoslav hats that they continue to wear. So we reduce our revolt risk there. Okay, so finally, this may be dooming our invasion of the Soviet Union, but oh, we need to come here and replace these people, because God, look at the traits that they got from being up here. Wow. Okay, just a sort of standard. So yeah, Rattiger, he looks like a good option for that. Dietl needs promotion as well. Yeah, you'll do. Shao can have a promotion, so again he should be commanding much higher ranking, spreading those traits out. So keep in mind, if you are well, maybe you should just take over for Dietl. Don't know. If you get a similar sort of situation, an invasion up here, move some of your key generals to just command divisions here and grind them up. Well, let's go. Okay, well that covers them. Okay, this is a little different. Okay, aircraft carrier aircraft prototype has advanced. Good. Okay, we'll let that go, even though we have very few of them. War sprite loss. British raids in Denmark. Okay, right there. Okay, well, lots of stuff going on. We don't have anybody in Lek. Uh-oh, Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive here. You know, I had some troops. Those guys probably should have gone to the... Just because I'm the Marine Commando, Strauss should have sent them to somewhere else, but oh well. They'll go into here for the moment, I think. Yep, got a slot for them. Den Huber's force, come up to there as well. The Stung Battalion, they get to go just there to hold that. The Ritter SA is coming in handy now that we have that. You guys kick the militia out because they slow it down. Now you move much faster. Okay, British raid here. These are happening maybe a little too often. Revolver held. I do. I've talked. Obviously, you know, I like these ideas of some of the scripted invasions, but some of this, and it isn't just, oh, this is too hard. It's more of, as well as I think we should need to be at war with the Soviet Union. Okay, agricultural, industrialized farms. So we lose. Oh, I'm going to wait on that because I think if I get a bit more money here, I'll get some other options coming up soon. Okay, Spain joins the Axis. Nationalist Francisco Franco, in a pragmatic move, accepts Phalanges. Serrano Suner, his foreign minister, advice and joins the Axis. Mussolini has been using his influence with, along with ours, to encourage Spain to join the fight against the international communism. This will improve our relations with Portugal. Okay, obviously, this is a TRE, well, I don't know if obvious that it's TRE, but it's a TRE event that fires once Spain joins the Axis. However, it happened, and of course, if you're watching, it sort of happened in an odd way. This time, I don't quite understand why or how it happened, but it did. And I sort of wanted to... How do I put this? The left, and if you, especially like I remember some late period Soviet propaganda, was everything was fascist that wasn't good. You know, the fascist West German government, the fascist American government, the fascist. And so once you start calling everybody a fascist, the term sort of loses its meaning. And it's sort of why I think there's been a rise of fascism in former Eastern Europe, because, oh, the bad people, the communists, were calling all the rest of these other people fascists, and they're doing really well, West Germany or Germany now, or, you know, or whatever. So it must be good to be fascist. So it sort of loses its meaning, if you know what I mean, if you call everybody fascist. And sort of with the wording of this event, it's something that I really wanted to do. It showed that Franco, he was a nationalist. He didn't start the Civil War. He was sort of in internal exile when the start of the Civil War broke out, when a junta of officers tried to do a coup against the Spanish Republican government that failed. We could talk about the reasons for the coup, and then Franco was brought in to lead the cause once the coup failed. So he was never a fascist. He had fascists in his government. I think 2 or 3 ministers, and it may have changed over the years, but to my knowledge, the highest sort of profile, ranking, whatever, in his ministry was his Minister of Foreign Affairs, who was a Phalangist. Now, Phalangists are fascists, not quite as hardcore dogmatic as Italian fascist Mussolini, but they're fascists. You can get to the Phalange in, spelled with a PH, in Lebanon, and they're just very fascist light at most. And that was sort of the Christian party in Lebanon for a long time. So, you know, sort of, you know, definitely not Mussolini fascists. So, you know, Phalangists are, you know, there's different flavors. You can look at that. And so I really wanted to show the difference between these three men here: hardcore fascist, generally a fascist, not a fascist but a right winger, who is a who sets up on his death to oh, I'm not going to have a family member become dictator. I'm not going to have a dictator at all. I'm going to have it transition to a monarchy with a parliamentary system under it. And he probably wanted it to be more conservative. Maybe, may or may not, he would have banned some of the parties that are openly running for election now in Spain or not. I don't know. But he definitely wanted to transition to a stabilized, having a monarchy is generally a conservative thought, conservative viewpoint. So he isn't a fascist. That doesn't mean you have to think that he wasn't a bad guy. You can think that, but he's not a fascist. You can think he's a good guy. I actually sort of kind of think he's a reasonably good guy that went through a very tough situation that required what we would call having to do bad things, because they didn't have Google and the security state to catch bad people just before they did things, and, on the way to plant the bomb. So they rounded up people a bit more, and they were a bit, bit harsher on people in the post-Civil War period. Now, Portugal very much wanted, or Salazar, I should say, leader of Portugal. Another guy, the Novo Estat, I'm sure I'm butchering the Portuguese, is another party that is, Salazar is so anti-Nazi, he writes a book in, I think it was 1938, that slams Nazism and publishes the book. So it's a well-published book. That's anti-Nazi. So he's anti-Nazi enough that the leader of a country writes an anti-Nazi book. So he doesn't want to have the Axis in the peninsula. His Nuovo Stat has some fascistic elements in it, but hey, does having a social security system mean your government's a socialist government? No, I really don't think it's he or his party is a fascist party. Now, the Novo Estat or whatever, in Brazil, I've been informed, same name, very different party, very fascistic, also going on at this time. They were fascists. The Portuguese, I mean, they both speak Portuguese, but the Portuguese one wasn't. It had some, as a lot of these people, third way, though as more I look at it, there isn't really a third way, because National Socialism, as practiced by the Nazis, isn't fascism. It's sort of state capitalism. Nazi economics looks much more like modern-day China. I can go into that sometime more. And that is up until, Speer. Once Speer is in charge, then it's all directed towards the war effort. Speer is taking over the economy, meaning you don't produce or do anything unless it's, as he grows his power and takes over control, without his permission. Now, of course, that's sort of the situation in the U.S. They basically stop all automotive production unless it's for the war effort. They stop the various productions. But that doesn't mean that FDR is a fascist. It just means that they are mobilizing the society for the war. That's how I look at, Speer. He was not Speer wasn't somebody wanting to run the German economy forever. It was just get us through this war kind of thing. So this improves our relations with Portugal, as well as some through personal contacts, some through various reading. Particularly Cuba, even though independent, there had been a fair amount of, my understanding, Spaniards that were pro generally the national side that had been moving to Cuba, so that increases our relations with Cuba, as well as Argentina and Uruguay. Okay. And the man we were just talking to. Streamlined structures for war production. Speer overcame the confusing multi-layered competencies between army administration and industry by centralizing power over war economy itself, or in himself. Factories were given autonomy, or as Speer put it, self-responsibility, and each factory concentrated on a single product, backed by Hitler's strong support, the dictator said. Speer, I'll sign anything that comes from you. He divided the armaments field according to weapons system with experts rather than civil servants overseeing each department. No department head could be older than 55, anyone older being susceptible to routine and arrogance. No deputy older than 40. This is again sort of in a few people have criticized sort of the social justice mindset that the Nazis and a lot of the youth have. Don't trust anyone over 30. Sort of the youth is right. The old people are wrong. So collective wisdom, or collected wisdom, because I'm sort of using both terms, over time is wrong. The youth is right. That I think is a mindset in these sort of revolutionary people. And the Nazis, trust me, the Nazis were very revolutionary. They may have not been very, Marxist revolutionary. I mean, we can talk about Goebbels and a few others, but they were very revolutionary. They did not want the old order to be around, and they thought youth, just because you were younger, you had certain things. Now, of course, if you're talking about active duty combat commands that you're running around and doing all kinds of, combat stuff, sure, you're right, but that's just a bit much. And over these departments was Central Planning Committee headed by Speer, which took increasing responsibility for war production as time went by for the German economy itself. Okay, this is something that I've talked about, and I totally agree that with revolverheld here, that Speer did have talents in and of himself, most assuredly. Most of us who sort of study this stuff have read at one point or another Inside of the Third Reich, and of course that is a Speer book justifying his own actions to himself and to people. It is obviously Speer making himself look good and all this stuff, and so you sort of maybe, especially if you haven't read a whole lot of other stuff, which at the time I hadn't, you sort of get into the cult of Speer is the great armaments leader, organizer kind of thing. And he was a good one. I'm not trying to downplay his talents, but what his big superpower was Hitler. And so once in a while people did get around him, especially when he was backing Guderian and having Guderian put in charge of all tank production. And then I don't know if it was Porsche or somebody else, but not heavy tank production. And Hitler goes, yeah, no, not heavy tank production, just tank production. But because Speer and Guderian were allied, as well as Speer and Milch that's Milch there. I don't know who that guy is. I think he's SS, just because they're pretty dark color tabs, but he may be SA or something, or I don't know. Don't know who he is with the sort of Hitlerite mustache, but so Speer is good, and this is why he rates highly in my mod. But so we get 3 dissent, but we get a 2.5% production. Okay, so that kicks us up to 5. And, upgrade the port in Tripoli. The difficulty supply situation and access force limited the military. We need to invest on our naval bases and capacity and supply bases there. Okay, revolverheld. I'm sure this is one of yours. This is not unduly expensive, except for in the money, damn it, and which I think is unduly expensive. And you need to have a no thank you. You gotta have a no thank you. I've struggled with one of my contributors, George, who just presumes that people want to take the historical path. But hey, what if you as Germany don't need the port in Tripoli anymore? So what if you just don't need that? Rare materials, Brazil, no thank you. Okay, okay, we're gonna let all of these sort of hang here for a little while. Okay, we've lost Lek. And we have the monthly outbreak here again. Serbia. Oh yes, okay, sort of forgot about all this in the mess of what's going on. You start advancing. Is that getting enough money now? Okay, well, HMS Malaya lost. I think those are all being lost, that have been lost here, that are just finally being registered to the such. Small fuel tank research has advanced. Here, okay, so, oh, we're waiting for that. So let's shift this over to direct fire unit training. Okay, this is a fantasy unit. I found the sort of cuff title. Wilhelm Gustloff. It's supposedly maybe, well, I don't know if it's a real cuff title in the sense that it's of the period, but it's actually found it on the website of the Wilhelm Gustloff sort of museum or whatever, dealing with the ship, but it's in an SS style, as opposed to a shipboard, you know, naval type style or something. So I use that as the basis for this, the SS Freewheeling Gerbs Division, Wilhelm Gustloff. Basically, I'm saying that whatever esoteric name that Himmler came up with, Hitler says nope, nope, which Hitler says there were several esoteric, or just somewhere esoteric, I believe you would call that. I don't remember the exact name. And a few were sort of German heroes of the past that no one's ever heard of unless you've read obscure German history of some sort. And Hitler says, nope, you know, yes, that whoever, you know, whoever it was a real person and a hero, but nobody's ever heard of him. Let's just call it the whatever division, and that sort of becomes the historical name. Our SS Germanic brothers joined the Waffen-SS and formed the SS Gustav as a Gebirgsjäger unit. Now, there were about, oh, I don't know, 600 or so Swiss nationals joining the Waffen-SS. A lot of them were in the PR corps of the unit. But this is sort of presuming, because of occupation, there will be more joining up. And there are, presumably a bunch of Swiss Germans are being conscripted into the Wehrmacht, and so these guys are either buying into the National Socialist group or just deciding to, hey, we want to join the SS as opposed to be in the army. This is a real SS photo of a real SS Mountain unit. Obviously, I don't know if obvious to you, but to me that uniforms say, so I don't know exactly what unit. But so this is a fantasy unit. This is what I will do with TRE when we get to a realistic but unreal or fantasy event. You know, meaning the event is that Switzerland's invaded. Obviously, it wasn't invaded, but had they done so, I believe there would have been many more SS volunteers, as well as the parts of, or as well as Germany just drafting in. But you already sort of have that mechanism of you know, of this for well, that's revolt risk, but click on the right thing for manpower. So you already have this, but this is extra volunteers. So you get this if and only if you've supported the SS or the Nazi movements in Switzerland earlier. So since we did, we get this. think it's on the map. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so we now have a pretty good SS mountain unit. Let's find an SS leader. Debs. That'll do. He's actually sort of the right type of guy for that. And we'll send these guys up to here to help with this. We're going to be sending more reinforcements up there very soon. I'm sort of hoping to get rid of some of this. Okay. Increase NSV assistance during the war. While the civilian defense during the air war was put under authority of the Reich Air Ministry, the NSDAP thought the NSV took charge of the public and population during air raids. The NSV deployed its resources to react to the emergency measures to supply the affected population with ready provisions and organize the relocation of bombing victims to other parts of the Reich. After the RAF bombing of Lubeck on the 14th of February 1942, the NSV acted upon direction of the local NSDAP HQ in support of the 25,000 rendered homeless victims and distributed supplies from all available local depots. Hence, the NSDAP decided to combine both the state and party-run civil defense echelons more consequently, and thus the NSV involvement in the air war increased further. Okay, I know I spoke a little bit about this before. There was a terrific problem dealing with people in this regards. There were various projects and programs to move people out of the cities into the countryside to get them away from the bombing, and particularly the non-workers' families. There was a whole big, like there was in Britain, a whole big mission to get children out of the way. Like in Britain, they put many children on board ships and sent them to Canada. And also they thought to get them out of the war to Australia. Now, obviously, the war later breaks out in the Pacific. In Australia, it doesn't affect Australia directly much, obviously, but they thought it was to get them away from a European war. But then there was also lots of getting children out into the countryside in Britain, and more or less that's all voluntary, though there's a lot of various encouragements in Britain to do so. There was more direct force involved in Nazi Germany at different times in different locations, because some of the different Gauleiters sort of take orders and instructions differently. So and if you don't want to take my word for it, because I'm just me and I'm going off of memory here, you can read Hitler's Compromises, a very well written book, but also very well cited for its research and where he gets the sources. This is where I'm getting a lot of this from. So you don't have to just take my word for it, but generally you can sort of take my word for it that there was force and compulsion in this. It wasn't just, signs on the wall saying, you should move to the countryside, it's safer, go sign up for it over down on, give some local address to sign up for it. There was compulsion in this. Part of it was definitely, and maybe a major part, to get children out of the bombing. But there was also a major part, maybe bigger, maybe not, to get children into Hitler youth camps for indoctrination, away from their parents, away from religious education. Because religious education in Germany, both in Protestant and in Catholic Germany, had been a very big thing prior to the Nazis coming to power. In fact, in some regions, now, I'm not saying something like Berlin, but in some regions, religious education, religious schools were, at least from my understanding, having more students than the secular schools. And these aren't like after-school religious programs. These are just religiously run schools. And so the Nazis wanted to break this hold of religion on the children. And they also did evacuations. Hey, your city's blown up. We're evacuating people. And everyone's like, yeah, I need food. I need shelter. My city's being bombed. Get evacuated. But then without permission, at later dates, whether that's a week later, 6 months later, at some date, there are mass movements of people that don't have passes, that don't have, to get on trains, that get on trains and go back to, because the trains are heading back to their cities, go back to their cities without permission. At first, the internal security services, whether it's the SA, the SS, or NSKK, because they also had a police element of it, or whatever, as well as the army that's sort of internal, we're trying to stop and arrest these people and send them back to where they belong. Eventually, at some point, they give up, because they're never really willing to shoot in large numbers the German population that they want to have support from. Notice what I said there. The German population that they want to have support from. So if you're known to be a radical communist and you're doing something wrong, they'll shoot you. If you're Jewish and you're doing something wrong, they'll shoot you. But if you're not one of these recalcitrant groups that they see as such, they're not willing to shoot you. And they also don't have the ability or willingness to put large groups of people into camps of some sort that are heavily enforced. Like, again, they're having camps, but they're sort of, like Hitler Youth camps. Not all camps, there's modern Boy Scouts. Well, sorry, the Boy Scouts are no longer in America anymore. The Boy Scouts has gone away now in America. You might be surprised at that, but there's no longer a Boy Scouts organization in America. Just very recently. I guess no loss, but camps can be just like a Boy Scout. There's still Girl Scouts. So in America, there's Girl Scout camps. So camps doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, but I'm talking like a detention camp of some sort. They're not able to have all of these people in them. So there are large internal migrations of people that are unapproved, shall we say, going on at this time. And some of this I totally believe is going on is simply relief for people in need, food, clothing, because it's all burnt up or destroyed, homes. Some of it is absolutely pure humanitarian, but it is also because, as you see here, the NSV symbols, runic, if you will, it's vaguely based off of ruins. Nazi signs everywhere. They're constantly, indoctrinating, getting people idea that seeing the swastika means help to you, because the swastika helps you, if you know what I mean. So it is a party organization. It has to be in line with the party. And to get aid and support through these organizations, you have to be in line with the party. Now, maybe not on the day of the bombing that they're just handing out food and coffee and whatever to distress people, but in an ongoing situation, an ongoing support of these people, you need to not only be a party member, but in line with the party, if you know what I mean. Meaning you're not going to be one of these other groups that are still in Germany. They're not going to be supporting you if you're one of them. So it is selective in that sense. Okay. Equip our troops for winter warfare, the failure of Operation Barbarossa, subsequent harsh meeting. Okay, to allow Hitler to continue the Russian campaign. Okay. Albert Speer seized his chance to present the Fuhrer with a quick success and rally the German demoralized people. Okay, so we lose supplies, get winter effects. Not necessary until... Well, we'll do this, though this maybe should have a check. I'm not absolutely sure. I think it's revolverheld, but this should have a check maybe for, is it war with the Soviet Union? Okay. And this is going to be a longish episode, I think, here, but hopefully soon. When I played it earlier, we got enough money to have a few more things trigger, I thought. Sort of why I'm waiting on some of these. Okay, well, let's go with some of these right now. Okay, one of the said earlier that I made several times, one of this sort of double hit, and I hit the wrong thing because I want to hit this one to lose descent and not have negative things. So no. And you, if you can, sort of like what I'm doing, is use these at the right time to reduce other events, to you know, other events descent increase in food ration. We're going to say no to all of them. Fuel is the only one I might have said yes to, but if I hadn't had some of that other big negatives, okay, I'm waiting for a little more money to come up. Bombing of Rostock. Series of RAF air attacks mounted against Rostock between 24th and 27th of April 1942. The Nazi leadership was alarmed at the possible impact of the raids on civilian morale. In the opinion of Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda ministers, the raids fulfilled the RAF's directives. As he wrote in his diary, the damage was really enormous. I have been shown a newsreel of the destruction. It is horrible. One can well imagine how such a bombing affects the population. Thank God it's a northern German population, which on the whole is much tougher than the Germans in the south or southeast. We can't get away from the fact that the English air raids have increased in scope and importance. If they can be continued on these lines, they might conceivably have a demoralizing effect on the population. Okay, now we'll gain more. Lose infrastructure and lose ICs. Okay, well, as long as this event does have some sort of check that Britain is still, you know, in British hands, fine. And they don't go overboard in their levels of operation. Okay. Develop a new tank. The Panther was a German medium tank deployed during World War II from mid-43 to the end of the European War in 45. It was intended to counter the Soviet T-34 and as a replacement for the Panzer III and IV. While never replacing the latter, it served alongside it and the heavier Tiger I until the end of the war. While the Panther is considered one of the best tanks of World War II due to its excellent mobility or excellent firepower and protection, it was less because I sort of reading. You didn't see my finger reading from here to here. It's got excellent mobility. It was less impressive in terms of mobility, reliability, and cost. Now, I would disagree with the mobility thing. Its reliability and cost is the problem. And the reason it didn't have good mobility is because it wasn't reliable. It broke. Now, the very early, and I don't, yeah, okay, the Panther tank arrived and was rushed into combat in the Battle of Kursk. Its initial problems uncorrected. See, they did correct some of the initial problems, which resulted in a high breakdown rate. The Panther tank commanded the respect from the Allies, and its qualities, along with those of the Tiger, use to the introduction of heavier Allied tanks such as the JS. I know it says IS-2, but it's Joseph Stalin II, and the American M26 Pershing, as well as the development of post-war British Centurion tank. No, sorry, revolverheld. The Centurion tank made it into World War II, just barely, just like in the last few days of the war. It is the best tank of World War II, the Centurion. It is not a post-World War II or post-war British tank. It was there just barely, but it made it into the war. It's a British World War II tank. Its success were nullified by Germany's generally declining position in the war, the loss of air superiority by the Luftwaffe, and the shortage of fuel and training space, and the declining quality of tank crews. All that's very true. Okay. A couple of things, and some of this I'm getting from the Chieftain. You can find him on the web, on YouTube. Very nice videos on some of this stuff. And very right. The very earliest Kursk versions of the Panther had some real problems, including, I think, maybe even assembly and whatever was really sort of problematical. They rushed it out there. Didn't get through some of the teething. I think those that survived and were recovered were improved. So let's discount those tanks. The Panther, as it sort of says here, has a reliability problem. Well, they're, you know, and what is a better tank, a Panther or a Sherman? If you're driving a Panther or you're driving a Sherman, you'd probably say a Sherman. But if you were commanding Panther, oh, and here's you know, would you rather be in a Panther or would you rather be in a Sherman? Well, I think it was 8%. If I'm sorry if I'm getting this wrong. If you want to poke me, I can link to the video below when I put this up. I think it was 8% of the tankers in a Sherman tank were killed. 8%. That's all. That's a remarkably low number. Lots and lots of Shermans were knocked out. Now, as one thing as the chieftain points out, it's really easy to get out of a Sherman. You just go, click, pop the hatch, everybody out. And most people, especially in the somewhat later models, have a hatch. The Panther, oh, we're on fire. Oh, we got to open the hatch. Screw, 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 screw. Oh, it takes about 4 times as long, almost literally, to get out of a Panther tank than it is to get out of a Sherman tank. So as you're on a catastrophic fire, it's harder to get out of a Panther. Now, if you were to say to a tanker, you can be in a Sherman or you can be in a Panther, but if the Panther isn't working today, you're going in as a foot soldier. Which would they pick? They would pick the Sherman, because the Shermans were much more likely to be in combat on any given day than the Panthers. Now, why is the Panther so bad at this? Part of it is some design flaws. We're sort of even discontinuing or disregarding the very earliest models. There are some finicky things that not as reliable in manufacturing. But part of the problem is maintenance on a Panther is very difficult. To get into some of this road wheel maintenance, you have to take off the outer wheels to get into the inner wheels. Much harder to do. The transmission of a Panther is right up here in front. Oh, you want to do some quick maintenance on it? Oh, okay. What you got to do is you got to unbolt. Oh, you got to unbolt not the front glacis here, but the top where the hatches are. Remove the hatches, remove all the driving apparatus and all this seats and all this stuff, and then haul the transmission out of the tank just to do simple maintenance on it. Where the Sherman, you have easy access to do similar maintenance, as well as some of the other German tank models have easy access to do maintenance on it. It is physically harder, takes more time to do maintenance on a Panther than many other tank models. So that is part of it isn't that it's such bad mechanical design, meaning the gearbox breaks easier than on a Sherman. It's just that it's harder to do maintenance on it, and when you have to do maintenance on it, it takes longer. It takes a crane. It takes more because to get at some of the things you could get at on other vehicles without removing heavy stuff, you have to do more removal. So you don't have it in combat as much. So there are problems with the Panther, but you know, if it's working well, it's great, and it has reasonably good mobility for its weight. The engine on the Panther is one of the lightest tank engines for its sort of horsepower, because they've gone into areas of the engine and ground parts of it away to lighten it all up, to keep it light, the engine itself light, and have the horsepower that it's running. So it is a well-developed tank in many aspects, and I think it's one of the coolest tanks, if not the coolest tank of the war, but there are problems. Okay, develop the new tank, metal, supplies, big time metal, or big time supplies too, gain the extra wide. Yeah, we'll do that. Okay. Okay. We've won that there. Now, some of you have been sort of like going, hey, you ought to, and yes, it would be cool to take all of that whole Panzerschule, including the HQ, and break it up and add the units to real combat units. Maybe take these guys and upgrade them to, I don't know, some people have been saying light infantry. Parachuting, no. But we'll see. Strategically deploy the airborne school up there. Do we use a flak regiment? Maybe. Speer shul? No, that's just some HQs. The Werecrest, yes. This sort of militia division. Again, I've been encouraged to, hey, upgrade those. Yeah, that's not a wrong, especially when it's in white. If it has a colored division title, some of these are getting upgraded later on because they were historically. Some of them were just sort of basically sent into combat. Don't know if I'll ever get these guys back to the right spot. They're sort of historical base, but this whole scenario here is just exactly what and why I've kept these back here as a reserve. Now I was sort of thinking there would be invasions in Belgium or something, but okay, you're pinning them there. Join the attack. Hit them from two directions. British have landed on Madagascar. Okay. Let's get away from it. I wanted to get away from that. Get away from that combat sound. Okay, the British have landed on Madagascar. Our signal intelligence has picked up information about the British amphibious invasion. On Madagascar, reported the British have landed a force of up to 4 infantry brigades. This will endanger the political stability of our Vichy collaborating partners. Far away, however, right. That is very much what happened there. Somewhere I have a magazine with an article that covers the British invasion, okay, of Madagascar. Well, we can do something about that. I wonder, is it... There we go. That's what I think we're going to do. Yeah. Okay, support our allies. Do we send aid to our ally Persia? Originally it was, it was an earlier version of the game that was called Persia, to help them support our war effort. Okay, again, this is, for me, a no-brainer, but again, I do have options from, this is from the Air Bases and Foreign Aid and Airbase event mod. Just the same thing. So it adds a airbase level 2 in Tehran, which doesn't have an airbase. There is one somewhere. I have the naval map up. Yeah, here. There is that one airbase, and look at all of the Air Forces stuck down there in a one level airbase. But it adds it to, I don't know why there is, isn't at least a one level airbase already in Tehran, but there isn't. And that isn't necessarily Black Ice's fault, and it's just there wasn't one there in the game. But there, I would say, should be at least an airstrip of some sort. Pillbox, just to have some defensive ability. Anti-aircraft gun level 2, some supplies and fuel to help them out. So that's what this is designed to do, is just sort of help them out. And so now they have a slightly better defended capital. Okay, so the Africa Corps. It's actually going to go to Africa now. We'll leave those guys there. Okay, oh, I don't like this at all. Sorry, revolver held. Why don't you give the Vichy the chance to fight? Well, okay. Oh, maybe because, well, because they're not at war with you. Okay. No, no. I maybe take that back to some degree. Okay. Where is our closest base? There. Okay. Well, you get ready to invade. We'll see if we can send you some. Hopefully you make it pretty fast. Yeah, no, I understand better. Oh, well, maybe we should have put it here. No, we can invade down here. These guys are much slower, but we'll see about that. Well. Oh, we're probably not firing because we don't have the supplies. Oh, we need to do this, and no, I don't want to do that. We're gonna massively, and I should have been doing that a little while ago, but massively increase supply production. And we're going to save the game. All right. And we're going to end the episode here. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank you for liking the videos. I want to remind you, if you would, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And, of course, to post questions, suggestions, ideas, corrections. Love hearing from you. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.